9. Jody Herring. Vermont prosecutor Scott Williams was at a gym in downtown Bar one day in 2015 when he heard gunshots. He ran outside where he saw a colleague on the ground with a gunshot wound and a woman standing nearby with a hunting rifle in her hand. Williams tackled the shooter and took her gun, then comforted social worker Lara Sobel during her dying moments. The killer, 40-year-old Jody Herring, had recently lost custody of her daughter. She blamed Sobel, who worked for the county's Department for Children and Families, and wanted revenge. After killing her aunt and 2 cousins, whom she believed reported her to the DCF, Herring went to the office building where Sobel worked and waited for her to leave for the day. While being taken into custody, Herring was disturbingly calm, making small talk and laughing about what she'd just done as if it were a normal, everyday activity. Her adult daughter, Desiree, told news outlet VT Digger that her mother had a long history in family court, including the removal of 2 of her daughters from the home. She was also disgruntled when her granddaughter was taken away from Desiree, who condemned her mother's actions but said that she could understand why Herring disliked the people at Children's Services and eventually snapped. Herring pleaded guilty to 4 counts of murder and was sentenced to life in prison. But the conclusion of the case did little to heal the lasting emotional scars of those affected by the crimes, including Williams, who resigned from his position as a state attorney to deal with post-traumatic stress. 8. Dorothy Lee Barnett. Dorothy Lee Barnett lost custody of her infant daughter Savannah in 1994 over her wealthy, estranged husband's claims that she abused him during their marriage. She would later claim that her husband, Benjamin Harris Todd III, was the abuser, and she would use it as her reason for fleeing South Carolina with their 11-month-old during a supervised visit. Barnett's disappearance was meticulously planned. She changed her appearance, obtained fake identity documents for her and Savannah, and set aside enough money to start a new life. An international manhunt ensued, but law enforcement failed to catch up with Dorothy and Savannah, who spent time in Germany, France, Malaysia, Singapore, South Africa, and Botswana before ultimately ending up in Australia. Along the way, Dorothy remarried and changed her and Savannah's name for a second time. During her nearly 20 years on the run, authorities depicted her as bitter, mentally ill, and possibly dangerous, the same way Harris Todd had described her in family court. She was finally captured in 2013 while living in Queensland, where she was well liked among her neighbors. Dorothy was deported to the US and served 21 months in prison for her crimes. Savannah, who's now an adult, stood by her mother. She told the press that Dorothy was a great mother who gave her a stable upbringing, contrary to the demonizing way she was described during her custody battle with Todd. Now that she's done with her time, Dorothy wants to return to Australia where Savannah lives, but the country has refused to allow her to move back. 7. Jorge Morales II. Yannick Concepcion was alarmed when her little boy Jojo told her in 2021 that his father planned to take him away to a farm and that he hoped she would join them. But she continued to honor her court-ordered visitation agreement with the boy's father, 45-year-old Jorge Morales II, and things continued as usual for the next year. Concepcion's worst nightmare came true in August of 2022, when Jojo disappeared from Miami with Morales and his mother, 68-year-old Lilian Pena Morales. An Amber Alert was issued for the little boy, who was captured in surveillance footage at a Walgreens in Maine 2 days later. The suspects ditched the SUV they were traveling in near the Canadian border and have not been spotted since. Investigators believe that Morales spent months planning his son's kidnapping and that they're hiding out somewhere in eastern Canada. According to the last update, they may be in New Brunswick. Both the FBI and the US Marshals are searching for the fugitives and the little boy, who reportedly has medical needs. A $10,000 reward is being offered for information leading to Jojo's safe return. 6. Stephanie Russell. Stephanie Russell lost custody of her kids in 2020 for making false abuse allegations against her ex-husband in court and was relegated to supervised visits. The 52-year-old pediatrician from Louisville, Kentucky, decided that the best way to deal with the problem was to eliminate her ex from the equation. She found someone who said they were willing to kill her ex for a fee and agreed to pay $7,000 to get the job done. To show that she was serious, she left the first half in a Dropbox outside her office with plans to pay the second half once the victim was dead. But the hitman was actually an FBI agent, and in 2022 Russell was federally charged for the murder-for-hire plot. Attorney John Harrelson, who represented Russell's ex-husband in the divorce and custody dispute, told local station WLKY that the experience was like constantly swinging at balls in a tennis match. He said that the battle involved a lot of frivolous motions and meetings with Louisville's Crimes Against Children's unit. If convicted, Russell faces up to 10 years in prison with no possibility of early parole. 5. David Barnes. A Texas man named David Barnes was faced with a nightmarish mess when his ex-wife Svetlana Koptyeva violated a court-ordered custody agreement and fled to Russia with their 2 children in 2019. He traveled to Russia in early 2022 in hopes of seeing his kids and maybe even bringing them back to the US, but was detained in Moscow on allegations of abusing his kids years earlier. Koptyeva had made similar accusations against Barnes during their lengthy divorce and custody battle in the US, but came out on the losing end of it when investigators found no evidence to back up the claims. She's now wanted on a felony charge of interfering with child custody while Barnes languishes in a Russian jail. David's sister, Carol Barnes, told ABC News that her brother was never out for revenge against his ex-wife, and that he wanted both himself and Koptyeva to have an active and present role in the kids' lives. But Svetlana allegedly did everything in her power to keep the children from him, even when doing so meant breaking the law and leaving the country. As diplomatic tensions between the US and Russia grow increasingly tense amid the ongoing war in Ukraine, a negotiation between the two countries for Barnes' release seems unlikely. For now, he remains in Moscow's Detention Center 5, which is known for its deplorable conditions. Former Marine Trevor Reed, who was held there in 2019 for allegedly assaulting 2 police officers, described the jail as being rat-infested and extremely dirty in an ABC interview. By the time he was released, his weight had dropped dangerously low from malnutrition and he was coughing up blood. The Barnes family, along with David's friends and employer, have appeared on national news in hopes that high-ranking government officials will hear their pleas and do everything possible to get him released. 4. Chris Williams. After getting married, Chris Williams and her wife Rebecca Wilson decided they wanted a child. Wilson carried the baby, but Williams was equally involved in their son's life, making her no less of a parent than Wilson. But a court didn't see it that way when the now estranged couple went through a nasty split that saw them fighting over the little boy's custody. At a hearing in 2022, a judge ruled that because Williams had not adopted the child, she was not his legal parent. By then, the boy was 2 years old. She had been in his life consistently since day one, and he knew her as one of his 2 mothers. Williams was nevertheless removed from her son's birth certificate, and the judge ordered for the sperm donor that the woman used to be listed as the father. To complicate matters even more, the sperm donor decided that he wanted to be involved in the child's life and became a third contender in the already complicated fight. Williams made it clear that she planned to continue fighting for her parental rights, and as the case gained airplay, the Oklahoma ACLU announced its plans to step in and help if the case escalated to the state's appellate court. Thankfully, the judge reversed her decision and ordered for Williams to be reinstated on her son's birth certificate. While it marks a step toward reuniting her with her son, she still faces an uphill battle and is unable to have contact with her son as long as a 5-year protective order that Wilson has against her remains in place. 3. Neil Bhatia. A 46-year-old lawyer from Fairfield, Connecticut already faced a mounting pile of personal and legal issues when he refused to let his 2 kids and a mediator leave his house at the end of a supervised visit one day in 2022. Neil Bhatia eventually let them go, and when the cop showed up at his house, he claimed not to remember what happened and smelled of booze, according to police. He posted bond and was due in court the next day for a previous charge of violating a restraining order, but failed to show up. When police arrived at Bhatia's home to arrest him for skipping court, he barricaded himself inside. Officers soon began to smell natural gas and promptly evacuated the neighborhood. A SWAT negotiator tried persuading Bhatia to at least talk to him from a window, but he refused, and the team forced him out by spraying a chemical agent into the house. At his arraignment, the prosecutor urged the judge to set a high bail. Attorney Eugene Riccio, who represented Bartia's ex-wife, said that his client and her child had endured years of trauma and argued that Bartia is a danger to both his family and the community. He faces a slew of charges, including at least 12 domestic violence-related counts, some of which are from before the more recent incidents that landed him back in police custody. Court records show that Bartia was entangled in a lengthy divorce and custody battle that had dragged on for more than 5 years. Bail was set at $2 million, and he was still in custody, according to the last update. 2. Ted Huttico. In 2019, Ted Huttico's wife told him that she was leaving him and that their teenage son, now identified as transgender. Unwilling to put the matter on hold and discuss it at a time when Ted wasn't caught up in a work project, she abruptly left their home in the San Francisco Bay Area with the couple's 2 kids. In an effort to better understand what his child was going through and vowing to keep an open mind, he researched gender dysphoria and the transitioning process. He was concerned about the possible effects of puberty blockers and estrogen and wanted the teen to avoid medically transitioning until they were sure it was what they wanted. In court, the judge asked Ted if he thinks being transgender is a sin. He answered no, but was stripped of all his parental rights, yet was allowed to continue seeing his other son. He completely lost contact with his transitioning child, who's now 18 and free to make their own medical decisions. Speaking with the press in early 2022, Ted said that the two hadn't spoken in 3 years despite his attempts to reconnect. He's accepted that the kid he once knew as his son is now his daughter, and said that he hopes they can someday rebuild their relationship. 1. Carly Morris. When Carly Morris ended her marriage to her daughter's father, he returned to Saudi Arabia, where he was originally from, and left their little girl Tala with Carly in the United States. In 2019, he asked Carly to bring their daughter, who was then 5 years old, for a visit. She agreed, but things went terribly wrong a week into their visit, when her ex asked for her and Tala's travel documents so he could process their exit visa. Carly handed the documents over, but never got them back. She would later learn that her ex was using the documents to transfer Tala's citizenship to Saudi Arabia, where dual citizenship is not recognized. This effectively gave Tala's father sole custody and made Carly powerless to take her back to the US without his permission. The next thing she knew, she was spending each day alone in a windowless hotel room with no internet access, while her ex picked Tala up in the morning and returned her late at night. 2 years passed before Carly began reaching out to US politicians and diplomats for help. She finally won custody of Tala, but no decision-making power over major aspects of the girl's life. Carly is also banned from leaving Riyadh as she faces a criminal charge for speaking out about her struggle. The prosecution is seeking prison time, and the conviction could come with a death sentence. According to the Human Rights Foundation, around 50 American women who have children with Saudi nationals are fighting to get their kids out of the country. A battle that many women from Canada, the United Kingdom, and other Western countries are also currently facing. Thanks for watching. If you became concerned that a close friend was possibly endangering their kids, would you talk to them directly about it at the risk of rupturing the friendship, or would you anonymously report it to authorities and hope that your friend didn't find out it was you that made the call? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.